Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, and this is Wine, Waits, and Crafty Creates. I have some Halloween DIYs in store for you today, and it's gonna be great. So let's jump on in and get started. I'm removing the hanging tag and filling the little hole with some spackling, also from the Dollar Tree. You can find it in their hardware section. I sanded very lightly. I didn't put that much on there. And then I am cutting the pumpkins off of the back because I'm going to make this Halloween themed. I don't need the pumpkins. My X-Acto knife didn't work, so you do see me using my razor, so just be safe. Don't hurt yourself. It came off pretty easily though. Then I'm coloring the whole truck in Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. I'm covering the whole area of the truck in this. And then I am going to be painting the outer part of the tire in folk art chalk paint in Parisian gray. Then the area where I would consider the rim of the tire, I actually used Waverly paint in elephant and then a very slight dab of black on it just to give it a little bit darker look and to make it almost kind of look dirty like a tire rim would be. Then I'm sanding it down because I want the edges to be all sanded. I want it to look like a truck that has been driving through a graveyard and has been a maintenance truck and look a little rough. I will oftentimes use a fingernail file of all things. You can get these at the Dollar Tree because it is great for getting in tight spaces, small spaces, helps me get those edges a little bit more. So as you can see, I was able to get around the edges really nice, gives the truck a more weathered look, which is what I'm looking for. Then I am using this little paint set, this do-it-yourself grave. I totally forgot what I was looking at there for a second. A tombstone, this little coloring kit, and I am going to cut the tombstone off of the little base. I don't need the base on the bottom there. And this was even easier to cut off. It snapped right apart. Then I am going to cut around the outer part of the tombstone. You can see where they have it to where you could color a little spider on top of it. I just want it to look like a rounded tombstone. So I am just taking the outer edge and circling around so that way it will only have the round top finish. And this cut very easily as well. You maybe are able to use an X-Acto knife. I didn't even try since I had my razor knife out already with it. And then have your sandpaper ready because as soon as we get this cut off, we are going to just sand down the edge a little bit and it will be ready to go. I am going to use that folk art chalk paint again in the gray and then my ink in the Waverly to paint the tombstone. I'm going to paint it all in the gray and then just use the black to give it that weathered tombstone look. Then I am going to use these rub-on transfer stickers that I got from the Dollar Tree. I actually love this look and thought it went great with the tombstone, and it was exactly what I was looking for. So it worked out perfect. And then you all are able to get these yourselves should you want to duplicate this craft yourself. And there I was just showing you to make sure you take the backing off to the sticker, because if you don't, you won't be able to rub it on, which is what I was trying to do. Next, I am going to take one of these ghosts that come in a 5-pack from the Dollar Tree. They're the paint it yourself ornaments as well. They usually have them out almost every holiday. And I'm painting it in my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster. So that way my ghost will look like a ghost. Once I have everything all painted, now I need to make it so that my truck will stand up. So I'm going to use the Jenga blocks that I got from the Dollar Tree and stick them on with some wood glue. You will see I sanded the area down where I want them to go. That always sand if you've already painted something. Otherwise, glue don't always like to hold very well on a painted item. So I just sanded a little bit. I did paint the Jenga blocks except for the side I was going to have the wood glue on. I used wood glue. I did clean it up because you can tell I got put a lot on there. And then I used these little clamps that I absolutely love that came from the Dollar Tree as well. Aren't they cute? These are the larger ones, and then they actually have little ones. So hold it in place for 24 hours. I let it dry. Then it was all ready to go. And I am taking the clamps off. And then here's the test. Will it really stand up? As you can see, I'm very excited. I am clapping for myself. You never know if something is going to work the way you want. So I was very excited that my truck was standing. I was very excited about this project, y'all. I was very excited about making one just a little bit different and having a Halloween themed truck. So I was very excited. So once I started to put the items on here, I realized I wanted it to have a little bit more dimension. So I ended up taking another Jenga block, sanded down of course, and glued a Jenga block to where the tombstone was going to be. So the tombstone would stick out a little bit. So there would be some more dimension to the finished product. And then, and I used wood glue, and then I glued the ghost right down in front of the tombstone. Now, I did feel like my truck was a little too dark. I wanted it Halloween, but not that dark. So I wanted to add a little bit of color somewhere. So I ended up taking Mermaid Paradise and Real Red in my Upper Barrel paints and came up with this deep burgundy color that I ended up doing the railing. And I was really happy once I did that. Then I found these flowers at Dollar Tree, and they had little stick-looking things on them. So I cut the sticks off, and I glued them in the back of the truck around the tombstone, and then I ended up putting one around the ghost just to make it look like the truck was hauling more than the tombstone. The ghost apparently was just along for the ride. But anyways, I wanted something on the truck, and I ended up using my Cricut. But I wanted to show you that if you don't have a Cricut, these little stencils from the Dollar Tree have this cat on it. And that's what I was going to use until I decided to go the extra mile. And I'm doing this specifically for my husband. He loves scary movies. So I did the decal to where it has the Pet Cemetery cat and says Pet Cemetery. If it wasn't for that, I would have stenciled on that cat from that stencil from the Dollar Tree. So if you don't have a Cricut, don't sweat. Go get that stencil, and I think it will look just as good because you could do it in the purple to match the railing. But again, just for my husband, I thought he'd really love this. I did the Pet Cemetery, and I love how it turned out. I was very excited with my truck. Now on to project 2. We are going to make this cute little pumpkin decor piece. I have this sign that I got from the Dollar General, actually, and they had a bunch of things on clearance, 50% off. So I think it was a $2 or $250 picture, and I got it half off that price. And then I had these pack of pumpkins that I had actually gotten. I believe those were from TJ Maxx, and there was just something about them that stood out, and I'm like, okay, I could definitely use this in a craft. So I am painting the sign first, and then you will see that I was not happy with how the paint turned out, and I would have probably had to given it a couple coats, even though I did it in the Waverly chalk paint. So I decided later on to go in with this scrapbook piece that I got. You can get them from $1 from Hobby Lobby, or you can even get them from any craft store. So I cut it out to be the size to fit inside the picture. and I'm just adding some Mod Podge. I'm not adding too much to the point where it's going to bubble, because Mod Podge can be a little complicated in that way. I added enough to where it will stick, but not enough to where I'll have too many difficulties. Then I am just cutting off 2 edges. 2 edges I had fit perfectly in, and the other 2 I'm cutting off once I have the Mod Podge in there and it's dry. So that way I have an absolute perfect fit for my scrapbook piece in the picture. I ended up loving this so much better than what the paint would have looked like. So I was very happy with it. Then I am taking the napkin and I am actually going to cut off one of the pumpkins. Now, if I was to just leave it the way it is, obviously there's going to be a couple spots that are not straight. So I cut it off in a rounded fashion. I used my X-Acto knife and I made sure I rounded it so that way it would be round and have the perfect pumpkin shape. I Mod Podged it on. I ended up putting too much Mod Podge. You don't want that much. It won't take a lot, and a napkin is very thin. So your goal is to just get it on the scrapbook piece to where it won't fall off. And at first I used the one that you can see kind of has this little glamour effect. But I did go in after the fact and took one of the plain sides to the pumpkin and Mod Podged it right over this one. I ended up not liking that little silver gold, I guess it's a gold look, with the buffalo check in the background. So I put one of the plain ones right over it, again with Mod Podge. Then I used my raffia from the Dollar Tree and made a little bow, just a little one to put at the top of the stem or at the bottom of the stem on the pumpkin, and my sign is complete. This was so simple, but honestly, I love it. I'm just so happy with the way this picture turned out. I already have it out for my Halloween decor, and something so simple, so easy, but it turned out perfect to me. So I was very thrilled with this one. Now let's get started on our next project, Project 3. I love this wreath. I'm so excited to tell you how I made it. So all the supplies, every single supply is from the Dollar Tree. I have one of their green foam wreath forms. I have this little Halloween witch hanging decor. I have one roll of burlap. I have a couple rolls of the witch hat ribbon that they had. I only used one. And then I had one of each of all the sparkle ribbons, and I thought that might end up being too much sparkle, so I did grab some black ones, white, and an orange one I had in my stash, all from the Dollar Tree. And again, I ended up only using one roll of each, and I really didn't use a whole roll of all the colors, so it won't take that much. I took the sticker off, probably didn't need to do that, because I'm just gonna next take some hot glue and hot glue a little area to the back of the foam wreath form to get my burlap wrap started. I am going to wrap the form in burlap just so the green don't show through. I end up putting so much ribbon on here. You really wouldn't have seen much anyways, but I just feel like personally it gives it a more completed look for my project, so I like to do this. And y'all, I did not realize I had so much dead time here when apparently I was getting my hot glue gun, so I apologize for that. I did not catch that until after the fact. So I was a little bit ahead of myself, but now you'll see me putting the burlap on the wreath. And then next I am going to take my ribbon and I am going to cut it in pieces about 6 inches long. And originally I started with taking 3 or 4 strands of the different colored ribbons and tying them in a little knot, and then you glue it on to the burlap. And it's kind of like those messy wreaths where you don't want everything to go the same way, or if you've ever done a wine cork wreath, you're just kind of putting them on there to fill all the spots. That's the way this wreath is going to work. You just want to kind of cover as many spots as possible. You want the ribbons facing different ways, and making it look as full as. Now on the larger ribbon that has the witch hats, that's the larger wired ribbon, I only did 1 per knot. That is for just more, it's not for filler, it's more because you want it to match your wreath. but it don't do as well with sticking out with the little ones. So I'm just using those in a different fashion, which you'll see the way I lay them out on the wreath. We wouldn't want more than one. Then we're just going to add the larger ones in to fill up that space. Now you will see that I did end up going to my living room. I don't have a chair in my craft room yet, so my back was getting a little sore. So I went to my living room and I ended up changing the ribbons. Instead of 3 or 4 per knot, I only did 2 per knot. It worked out much better because that glitter ribbon is so thick, so it just worked out a lot better. And then when I showed you the scene of where I only had a quarter of it full, and then I added the hat, do the hat before you fill it all the way up, and then just glue on your decor piece and keep going until you have the finished product, and then fill in any blank spaces that you see. I like to have mine as full as possible, and I love it. I'm very happy with how it turned out. And now here we go on to project 4. So this is the sign that I used from the Dollar Tree. I did flip it over, filled in the holes with spackling because I'm not going to be hanging it up that direction. And now I'm going to be painting the back side of it in my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. The nice thing about chalk paint is it goes on really thick, so I really ended up only needing 1 coat of this. Next, I am using my paint Sharpie, also from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to draw lines, kind of the same area where you see the planks already on this picture, to give it a shiplap look, to try and make it look a little bit more like real wood. Now, to soften it up, I will sand it down a little bit, and then the nice thing is, because I did it while it was still a little wet, it blended in some of that black color, which is what I want. I wanted to give it that real wood look. And then I took Waverly paint in the color Elephant, and I dry brushed it along the edges and just a little in between. On the top, I got a little bit more than what I typically would like, but you know what? Sanding takes care of that. That's the nice thing about sanding. It really helps it blend in. And then if you don't want to sand, you can even use what I'm using right now. I am using a diaper wipe. And if your paint is still wet, it will really help blend it in and give it that effect as well. It was still a little bit darker than what I was looking for this particular project, so I went in with some of my plaster colored paint again, just to calm down some of those edge pieces that I just wanted it to be a little bit lighter than what it really was. Then I did actually create my wording for this sign on my Cricut. You could use stencils or stickers from the Dollar Tree. Both of them would work just as well. Using my Cricut helped me get the look I was going for on this sign. Obviously the white ghost on such a white background didn't go very well, so I highlighted the ghost in my Elephant paint by Waverly, and I actually thought that gave him a more spooky, ghosty look, so I was really happy with that, and put him in place with some hot glue. Next, I am using some nautical rope from the Dollar Tree to create my hanger. The first thing I'm going to do is actually make a knot using the twine, and they're going to be fake knots. They're going to be just for decoration purposes only. I will just glue them in place on the front of the sign where it will look like the rope on the back of it that I'm using to hang it up with is actually coming through the wood. It'll look like it's done that way, when actually they're just fake little knots on the front of the sign. Then just flip your sign over and hot glue the part to the rope that you're going to use to hang it up with. Glue it down, and then I cut off a couple pieces of ribbon just to make sure it's extra secure. And this is the final result, y'all. I love it. Thanks for watching, and watch tomorrow for part